Welcome to Southern Fried Baseball, brought to you by College Baseball Central, bringing you 90 feet closer to the greatest show on dirt. Here are your hosts.
Welcome back, College Baseball Central fans, NCAA Insider fans. Lots of new going on with this Southern Fried Baseball. We have a new chicken, new intro, as well as a new co-host in Nick. We got a little bit of an upgrade off of Andrew from last year, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it's definitely. I think everyone will know that it's definitely an upgrade.
Yeah, 100%. The Diamond Report is out and live, so if you hadn't had a chance to pick that up before opening day, we still have digital copies available up until the first season. We're going to be going by Diamond Report order or alphabetical order. Nick, before we jump into it, I mean, we're already here. It's Tuesday. Got some games coming up here Friday early. Who are you most excited to see this year?
Ooh, you're making me pick a team. I won't pick a team. I'll say the parity that we're going to see, I think. And I know that's no like shot in the dark when it comes to SEC baseball. Like you look at last year, LSU won it all, and I think they were the 6th overall seed. Texas won the league, and yet Vandy was the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. Obviously, Tennessee's gone to 5 straight super regionals. So I mean, who's kind of going to be this year's team? You look at what A&M last year seemed like before the season started, like right now. 365 days ago, everybody thought, oh, A&M's going to win the SEC, probably the favorite to win the whole thing, and then they didn't even make the tournament. So to me, I'm most excited when it comes to SEC baseball is I think they're like, are you going to be surprised that the 10th or 11th team that we have preseason ranked in the SEC win it? Because that'd be somebody like maybe Alabama with the best freshman class, I think, in the SEC this year. Great portal. Or somebody like Ole Miss, who last year was a regional host. I don't think that will absolutely shock anybody. It'd be surprising, yes, but I just think there's so many teams that can jump up halfway through the season and surprise some people.
Yeah, you mentioned the parity. I mean, Tennessee was preseason ranked number 17 the year they won the national championship. Texas was a pretty much unanimous double-digit pick in SEC preseason last year. Ole Miss was 15th in our SEC poll. So I know that we're already starting to see some banter about scheduling with easiness. It's important to remember that what you know February 10th is not what you know June 1st. I mean, there's a lot of teams that kind of come out of nowhere every single year. And we'll start that off, with alphabetical order with a team that really did kind of come out of nowhere. The Alabama Crimson Tide, they went 41-18. That's 16 and 14th, good enough for 9th in the SEC. 3rd season for that Rob Vaughn. It's an improved team. It's their first most wins that they've had in 10 years. There was a lot of discussion about them being in the hosting argument. Obviously, things didn't fall the way down the stretch to go to and barbecue out in that Southern Miss Regional. But, I mean, they return a ton of talent, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the two biggest, obviously, outside of Justin LeBron, getting Zane Adams and Tyler Fay back was massive. I think a lot of people, including myself, thought those two guys would both leave for the draft. So to get those two guys back and kind of be your horses on Friday and Saturday, you know what they're going to give you. You're going to get 5 to 6 almost every single weekend. And that's going to help out because I think what they lost the most in is kind of going to be this bullpen. So we'll see. I think the bullpen is going to decide the difference between their floor and their ceiling this year. I think the offense is going to hit like always. So yeah, it's just that pitching staff after Zane Adams and Tyler Fay to me.
Yeah, I mean, Zane Adams was the Friday guy with Riley Quick sliding into that Saturday role. I mean, anytime you return a Friday night guy, and I think Zane Adams has a lot to prove this year. He has that ERA over 5, really didn't pitch that strong in SEC play, really kind of, I would say, got overemphasized. But I think that bullpen's a big, big key emphasis because we try and not talk about players that were on the team last year that are no longer. But they had just a guy that would eat innings in that 9-hole. I mean, he led the SEC in appearances. And, down the stretch when they didn't get the outings out of him, that really was where they were bounced. I think that this team's going to go as far as Justin LeBron takes them. He's a consensus top 10 pick. He had over 316. But, down the stretch, that last month of SEC play, like he really struggled to hit curveballs. And a lot of teams really kind of were attacking him with that curveball. I think we saw that in that Southern Miss Regional is he has a deficiency in his swing right now. So it's going to be interesting to see now that he knows how he kind of reacts to it. And then the guys that they brought in, I think, is a really, really big one. Brady Holt from USA. You mentioned that stud freshman class coming in. I mean, we have a chance to see probably 2 or 3 guys that start as freshmen it's exciting time to be an Alabama baseball fan, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. And when it comes to Justin LeBron, I mean, rumors are he's up to 200 pounds now, gained about 15 more in the offseason. Yeah, but you mentioned it, that 24% swing percentage is not something you can have, especially in SEC play. I think he's somewhere in between what he started out last year, 13 home runs, like the first 21 games or something. I think he's somewhere between that and where he finished in the SEC. He's a good enough player where I think, and he's athletic enough where I think he's going to make adjustments. But yeah, you mentioned these guys. Bryce Fowler moving over to center field. Jason Torres is back. Brady Neal at catcher. And then kind of an under, I guess, dark house name is it Osterhaus or Osterhausen from IPFW. Hit almost 350 last year with like 19 bombs at IPFW. So that's going to be good. I think this is Rob Vaughn's most talented team, top to bottom. Now, like we've mentioned during this, a lot of portal players, a lot of freshmen that are going to have to contribute. So I think that's going to be the difference in what they can really do.
Yeah, just since the Diamond Report comes out, Sam Christensen, the OU transfer coming over, has that injury. Brady Neal, it'll be kind of interesting to see kind of how they use him too, as well as he played second base in the fall. But I think it's a really, really exciting, dynamic Alabama team. Caden Humphrey's another guy that I can't believe we've gone this long without talking about.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be another guy that just absolutely eats innings for them. Okay, so we're not going to go ahead and do power rankings, but we're going to do over, under, halfway. Do you think Bama's in the top half of the SEC or the bottom half of the SEC?
I think the top half. I'm higher on than most. I have them preseason ranked number 21 in my top 25. So I'm high on this team. I think this is one of those, don't be alarmed if they don't start out hot, but it's one of those just once they start clicking, I think they'll be very good the second half of the year.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the other side of it. I think that this team's going to need to really, really lean on LeBron. They're losing some of that really big senior class that was leaders for him. Like I said, we're going to plug the Diamond Report All Show. Eric Hines is who they did as the X Factor, and the Uncut Gem is Miles Upchurch.
Yeah, freshman.
And the biggest strength, obviously, is Justin LeBron. They put biggest concern as transfer production, just because a lot of those guys outside of Christensen, who again is not going to play that much, if at all, is kind of these unknown guys. So I think it's really kind of an intriguing team. And for me, they're one of those teams where I don't really know where to rank them. Like, I could see them being a host. I could also see them kind of being a 3 seed and being spicy somewhere. I think it's a really, really exciting team. And that's a good segue into the next one. The Arkansas Razorbacks, as you may recall, they went to the Final Four. We're not going to tell you how they lost, but they went to the Final Four in Omaha. They lost a ton off of that team. But again, it's the University of Arkansas. They're going to have a ton of transfers that are very, very elite. They're going to have guys that throw 95, 96, 97. They finished second in the SEC. They've won 5 straight years of over 20 games in the SEC. What do you kind of see as the ceiling of this Arkansas Razorbacks team? Because, again, it feels like another DVH masterclass with this transfer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the ceiling is with DVH. It's always Omaha. I could see them getting there again. I think there's a lot more question marks, though, that I have with this team. Like, I have them 11th, which is lower than a lot of people. You lose, obviously, your whole rotation. You lose all 3 starters in the outfield. You lose your top 3 relievers. You're basically relying on Gabe Gackle to be an ace. And we kind of saw what happened last year when he tried to be a starter. It just didn't work out quite right. But when they moved back to the pen, he looks like himself again. So I think that's a huge question mark. Other guys like, can Cole Gibbler step up? Who's kind of gonna be those Saturday, Sunday guys that are really going to dominate, like we've seen Arkansas pitching kind of do in the past?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like an Arkansas team. Like, I kind of feel like a lot of their question marks are with the pitching staff. Like I said, we've kind of learned our lesson with Gabe Gackle at this point. But I mean, the lineup just feels so deep. You return, Team USA captain Ryder Helfrich, who's back. TJ Pompey out of Texas Tech is a guy that can really, really swing it. I know that he had some injury issues, but I mean, 2 years ago, he was an absolute monster for a terrible Texas Tech team. They get Damon Ruiz, who's just an on-base machine. He's not really going to tear it up with the power numbers, but he's going to get on base more games than he's not. And, Brumbaugh, the freshman, I think it's a really, really dynamic lineup that's not going to be relying on the pitching staff to be as perfect as we've seen from Arkansas teams in the past.
Yeah, I think also, where's the power going to come from? I mean, outside of Helfrich and Aloy, these are guys you mentioned, guys that get on base should probably hit around 300 to 325. That wouldn't be surprising, but are they going to get to 70, 80, 90 home runs as a team? Might be pushing it. So kind of where does that come from when it comes to an offensive standpoint? Obviously, like Eloy's going to try to play a corner outfield spot too. That's concerning when it comes to the defense a little bit because they don't. Obviously, what helps too is if he can, and that way leaves open a spot like for DH for somebody like where Reese Robinette doesn't necessarily have to play first base and he can DH and then kind of move some guys around in the infield would help a lot. So like I said, there's a lot of just question marks on this team. But would I be surprised if they end up in Omaha? No. And would I be surprised if they win the SEC? No. But that's also because do I think they're the best team? I don't. I just think their schedule, if you look over to the right there, their schedule, like I was joking with Matt about this. I think this, like they're acting like this is DVH's like retirement party by the schedule that they were given in the SEC.
Yeah, they were one of the ones that everybody kind of came after is, they avoid Texas, they avoid LSU. You mentioned kind of the DH role with Souza in the Diamond Report. We did have him. He was in a really, really deep competition with Cam Kojal last year. They were even having him at first before Reese Robinette kind of picked it up down the stretch. I think it's interesting with the outfield because Ruiz doesn't really have the strongest arm, if you will. And, the other Eloy is going to be a little bit of a liability. So I think that the outfield defense is a little bit of a concern. This just feels like a throwback college team. But, yeah, the schedule is going to be an interesting one because I think they're going to be one of those teams where they'll be sitting there at the end of the year and we won't consider them the best SEC team, but they're just going to have so many more wins than those around them.
Yeah, that could be like
that's where we are.
They could be 20-10. DVH already said, yeah, he can't coach that much longer. He's like 74.
I mean, they did retire his jersey at McLennan over the weekend. So
did they?
Something has to give.
That's another sign. But yeah, you also mentioned outfield defense. Didn't even touch on Micah New, who's going to be moving to center field, and he played shortstop last year at Marshall. So that's another guy with very little experience playing the outfield. He made, I think, 30 errors at shortstop last year. So, I mean, it's a good move for him personally. So it's just another question mark about this outfield, especially defensively.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, too, what they do with Brumbaugh and Pompey because both can play short, both can play third. We project Pompey to play third with Brumbaugh playing short. Strength, we listed as the pitching staff. Concern, like we said, defensive experience. X factor is going to be Gabe Gackle. I think if we see which, granted, he was injured, but if we see the Gabe Gackle that gets chased after 3 like we saw against A&M, I think it really kind of does set them up behind the 8 ball during the weekend. They don't really have the pitching flexibility that they had last year. Uncut Gems, Hunter Dietz. Cole Gibbler, I think, is another guy where feels underrated for the amount of just arms that Arkansas has had the last few years. But I think it's another really, really exciting Arkansas team where, they're going to lose one of those games in Arlington and everybody's going to freak out. But, once SEC play rolls around, I think they're going to be pretty, pretty good. Yeah. Over or under, I'm over on them, over the top half of the SEC. Is that kind of where you're seeing them?
Yeah, I think this, like I said, the schedule helps. I probably have them, if you'd like talent-wise and what I put on the field, I'd probably have them 5th or 6th.
Yeah, I think it's an absolute loaded team. It feels like, DVH masterclass inbound. Moving on to probably the biggest surprise for me last year, the Auburn Tigers. They went 41-20, 13-17 for 6th in the conference. They hosted a regional. They hosted a super regional that they were bounced in by Coastal Carolina. They were an absolutely young team last year with a ton of sophomores. Bub Terrell, Chris Rembert, Christian Chatterton was another guy that we were talking about a ton last year. This feels like the year for Butch Thompson. They've kind of been building towards this, and this is an absolutely loaded roster, I think, by Auburn standards.
Yeah, this is a team I'm very high on. I have them ranked 5th. I think I think a lot of people forget. You just mentioned it. A lot of people forget this was a number 4 overall seed last year. It just kind of slips by. And I think they were a College World Series caliber team last year. They had just ran into Coastal, who I think at the time had like 23 straight wins. Obviously ended up being 28 by the end of it before LSU took them out. So just a bad draw there. But yeah, as long as there's no sophomore slumps, which we know in this industry is very possible. But this was always supposed to be the year. Last year was kind of supposed to be a building year up until this year. And they just kind of I think they overplayed. I think they played better than a lot of people expected them to. Like you said, they were surprised. I think this year is what everything's been leading up to. You bring in guys like Jake Marciano, who was great as a freshman last year at Virginia Tech. Griffin Graves, I think, is going to surprise some people. and could turn into like a legit ace on Friday nights. Christian Chatterton, you mentioned. And then we'll see what they do with Andres Alvarez, who was great out of the bullpen last year. I know he started a little bit, but he could be another one of those. If a guy's just kind of off on a weekend where he can come in, throw 5 innings or so, or he might earn a weekend spot. That could be one of those. So we'll kind of see from that end. But yeah, you mentioned this offense this might be the best offense in the SEC. And a lot of people are going to just go, wow. When you're talking about the league with Tennessee and LSU and Florida, but this might be the best offense. Yeah, Chris Rember, I think, best second baseman in the country, in my opinion. Didn't even mention Chase Frelick yet as the catcher. Bub Terrell, another freshman who's just tools out, should take another step forward. So, yeah, I think this offense is going to carry it. It makes their floor very high and will kind of give this pitching staff an even longer time to develop.
Yeah, the pitching staff, I think, is a little bit of a question mark for me because, we're talking about Alvarez, we're talking about Chatterton, we're talking about Griffin Graves so much, where it was kind of this revolving door, if you will, on that Sunday roll as they were just trying to get any outs. But I think that while it wasn't a good thing at the time, looking back now with all this experience that they have, they can lean on Chatterton. They can lean on Alvarez. These are guys that have done it in the SEC. Drew Whalen, I think, is another guy from Western Kentucky, kind of seeing how they use him.
That's right. Pitcher of the year in the Conference USA last year. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and he's got really good stuff. I got to see him in that Georgia Tech, Ole Miss regional. But I think that how they use this pitching staff, because they have a lot of guys that they can slot into different roles. Like we said, we don't really talk about guys from last year, but, they had a Friday guy and a Saturday guy kind of locked in, which, normally wouldn't have been the best thing going forward the next year after. But again, they had Chatterton, they had Alvarez kind of sliding in. You mentioned kind of the sophomore slumps, but it is important to keep in mind that Frelick and Rembert are both draft eligible. So they're very old sophomores. And, Wimbert's a guy that I'm really, really high on. He's probably going to be the first second baseman taken in the MLB draft. And I really think that, we mentioned it with LeBron where they're going to go as far as he takes them. I think he really has to have kind of an Ike Irish role this year where, when the bats go cold, Rembert's got to be consistent. I mean, Ike Irish for almost 2 years bailed them out of a lot of games with his hitting. I mean, that Texas series, he had all their RBIs for like 2 games. So where do they find the production for Mike Irish? And I'm kind of breaking our rule of talking about guys from previous years, but I think that's the one. Do you trust these sophomores to have advanced in the hitting enough to replace the loss of Ike Irish? I think that's going to be the $1 million question for this Auburn Tigers team.
Yeah, and how we know what the top lineup's going to do, like basically 1 through 5, maybe 1 through 6. What are we going to get out of? What do you get out of Cade Ballou? Does Todd Clay, a lot of name people don't know, Todd Clay from UAB, who's I think is going to start at first. I know they were trying him out at third base a little bit. I believe he'll end up starting at first. Had a great year at UAB last year. And Eric Guevara, we'll kind of see what they get out of the bottom of the lineup because that could also raise his floor a lot because we know at the top of the order is loaded.
There's one guy that we haven't mentioned just because in the Diamond Report we don't have him starting just with how much kind of depth they have in the outfield is Ryan Farber from Texas State. I mean, this is a guy, 2024, was one of the best players at Texas State. Had by his standards a disappointing season, transfers out. A lot of us have him going to like an American school. So it's really kind of interesting that he ended up at Auburn. We have him on the outside looking in kind of for that fourth outfield spot. But I think that just really shows the talent that Ballou, Carter, and Lucas Steele have. Because, I think it's a really exciting time to be an Auburn Tiger fan. But, I mean, depth. That's the thing that I keep coming back to with this Auburn team is I keep wanting to kind of go low on them. But it's like, okay, if Ballou doesn't hit very good one game, Carter can kind of pick up the slack. I think that's the one thing that really kind of showcases this Auburn team to me is the depth.
Yeah, I mean, I have them in Omaha. They were one of my Omaha 8. I think, especially you look at, we keep talking about how good this offense is. Butch Thompson being a pitching guy, I think they'll find a way to figure it out. He's too good pitching wise. I know they lose Sam Dutton, which hurt. He was kind of like you mentioned, who's going to be that horse on Fridays, where you just knew every Friday night he's going to step in, he's going to give you a chance to win. So if I trust Butch Thompson, I think this is a team that ends up in Omaha at the end of the year. So I guess that before you go to, are you high or low on this team? I'm very high.
Yeah. We have biggest strength, sophomore stars. Biggest concern is that weekend rotation. X factor is Jake Musiano. Uncut gem is Griffin Graves. I think the consensus on this Auburn Tigers team is that we're both above them on the cut line for half. So you only got 5 spots left, by the way.
I know. They just happen to be in alphabetical order at the top.
Probably the biggest question mark for me moving on is the Florida Gators. 39-22. They went 15-15 in the SEC. They get bounced in that Conway regional. It feels like we haven't had a dominant regular season Florida team in a while. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I don't think that this is the one that bucks the trend from the last 3-4 years. This does not feel like, from a talent standpoint, the same level that they've had as the past few years.
Yeah, and I think most of it's on the offensive side, which is what you don't usually get out of Florida Gators team. I think this is the top 1-2 punch when it comes to starting pitchers in the SEC with Liam Peterson and Aiden King. So they're going to get a chance to win every Friday and Saturday. Now, who on this offense is really going to step up? Can Cade Curlin stay healthy? Brendan Lawson's obviously a good player, big name. Blake Sear, everybody knows, but it's just never fully clicked. It didn't click at Miami, didn't click in his first year at Florida. That's another guy where it could be like an X Factor type, where if Blake Sear turns into the player that we thought he was coming out of high school, he could really turn this Florida team into like an Omaha type team. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm lower on this team than most. A lot of people are overlooking the O'Sullivan stuff in the fall. I think a big part is losing Chuck Geralman, their hitting coach, and the guy that was their interim. Losing him to Tennessee, I think, is going to mean a lot. And then you lose Jaden Bastain, who was supposed to be a starter, broke his leg in the fall. He's out for the whole season. So I think we talked about question marks for other teams. I just have a ton with this team, even outside of how good those two starters are.
Yeah, for me in the lineup standpoint, because it's one of those things I want to kind of end on a high note, so I'll leave that pitching staff. But Carson Bowen's a guy that we kind of all expected to get drafted last June. Yep. Blake Sears, a guy that we kind of expected to get drafted last June. Curlin, I think, is another guy where, if he doesn't have the injury, he's getting drafted. So that's going to be the interesting one to me is, do you have these guys that are just kind of hanging around college baseball a little bit longer than they should? Is this going to be like one of those gap years where Florida just kind of punts? I think it's a weird year for Florida because you mentioned all the stuff with Kevin O'Sullivan, which, by the way, he's going to be suspended the first week too. I think that's the one thing that we need to kind of keep in mind here is they've had a lot of distractions. So I guess what Florida team do we see? Do we see the one that we saw at the end of the stretch that was kind of just going through, taking 2 of 3 from everybody? Or do we see the one that we saw at the beginning of the year where they really, really struggled? And, they get Liam Peterson. I think that this is a year where he takes a big step forward from an ERA. He's one of the most unlucky pitchers in college baseball when you actually kind of look into those deep stats. Mm-hmm. And Cooper Walls from Hawaii. I mean, this is another guy who was an all-conference selection that a lot of SEC teams really, really were after him. And then Florida kind of swooped in at the last minute. But, where is this lineup going to get its oomph, its punch? The Jack Caglione that you circle in the 3-hole. I think that's going to be the story of this Florida Gators team.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's the bullpen going to give you behind those two guys as well? You look at the big names like Billy Barlow, obviously, is back. Christian Rodriguez, who dominated in the Cape, is there. But what do you get out of Luke McNeely, who every year he's very good, obviously, but he always has kind of those – he's known for those blow-up games every once in a while. You're relying on a couple transfers there as well. So it's the question mark. And then also Sundays. I know everybody's kind of naming Cooper Walls as like the guaranteed Sunday starter. I just don't know what to think yet.
I think it's McNeely. I think McNeely's going to slide into that Sunday role.
Okay.
But, I mean, it's one of those – but they've had McNeely eat innings, I feel like, his entire time in Florida. So it's almost more important for him to slot in, give you 9 outs on Friday and Saturday.
I agree. And that's why I didn't think he was going to start at all. And I'd be like, I would be surprised if he does. I'll take your word for that one. But yeah, like I said, everybody in Cooper Walls is just somebody who has to prove it to me. Like, obviously he was good at Hawaii, but it's one of those, it's just tough. Like the SEC is way different. And it's one of those, like, especially on Sundays when there's going to be a lot of runs put up by both teams. So it's can you give up 3-4 and still be okay with it, knowing you need to get those 5 or 6 innings because your bullpen's probably been taxed the first 2 days. So that'll be interesting to see what they give him, what he gives them.
You know who Florida reminds me of? They remind me of Vandy the last 2 years, where every part of you is like, Florida is college baseball. We need to trust Kevin O'Sullivan. Like, they have a ton of talent, but you kind of look at it and you're like, I don't know. Like, there's just no, like, oomph. I feel like they should have more oomph in a Florida lineup.
I agree. It reminds me of, was it the 2013 23. It was either the 23 team or 24 team where ranked number 1 preseason, and obviously got carried. We kind of know how that went towards the end of the season. Yeah, I mean, obviously they have the firepower when it comes to the names, when it comes to the talent. It's there. It's just, is it going to click? So we'll see. Time will tell. Their schedule is very tough, especially compared to Arkansas's. So this is one of those, like, this is going to be very different, and this is going to be a kind of, in my opinion, middle of the pack team.
I think this is going to be one of those teams where we Florida's kind of hidden a little bit early in the season. I mean, Miami, this is an SEC show, but this is probably one of the best Miami teams that we've seen in a while. Like, we're going to know how good they are, 3 weeks in. Arkansas, again, week 3, I think, is another one. But it's going to be interesting with this Florida team, because this feels like another one where they're not going to get the benefit of the doubt that they've gotten the last 2 years with the schedule. Like, it's going to be, I think, an interesting one. So you said you have the middle of the road. Is that above or below the cut line? I have them below.
Ooh, let me see. I have them below. I've got them 9.
9, interesting. Moving on to their cocktail partner, the Georgia Bulldogs. They are 43-17, 18-12, good for 5th in the conference. They got obviously bounced in their own regional. It's Wes Johnson's 3rd year. That is kind of hard to believe. And again, they're going the Indiana football route. As if you look at the Diamond Report, yellow indicates transfers. I mean, those are all transfers. Let's start with the pitching staff. It's an old group. It's a transfer group. They have a lot of guys that have started a ton of games, but those ERAs are a little bit high for some of these guys.
They really are, and I get, this is another one where the talent's there. Joey Volchko, we know what it is. It's 98, 99 as a starter, and that's no joke. But it's also somebody who had an ERA in the 5s last year at Stanford, and now he's
sixes.
I was even giving him the benefit of the doubt. 6s at Stanford, which is not a hitter's ballpark at all. And now you're going to Georgia, where half your games are going to be at home, and that is a hitter's paradise there. I mean, it's not quite Tennessee, it's not quite some of these other SEC ones, but people love hitting there.
I don't know, if you get some lefties, it's almost easier.
Yeah,
than Tennessee.
True. That's true. It's a weird a little bit weird dimensions. You look down there in the bottom right. I think it's like 350. Like down the line,
but I mean, Condon would get
all.
Fisted and muscle balls out, so the ball does really fly there.
Yeah, it really does fly. That's why I say it. Yeah, even though it's 350, it doesn't play like it. And then Matt Scott is another one, obviously another Stanford transfer who was pretty mediocre last year as well. So it's one of those, you're relying on those 2 guys to be your front end starters. Caden Aoki, I think, has proven he's an older guy where you know what you're going to get. He's a strike thrower. It's low 90s. It's not really a miss bat guy. He's more of like kind of these sinker ball pitcher who's going to let people put it in play.
Yeah, I don't think the 90 strikeouts translates. I want to be the first to say that.
It doesn't. It doesn't at all. And that's what. And does 90 and does it translate from another way where it's like you're facing these Big Ten offenses in colder weather, and now you're going to the South and facing these SEC offenses. So it's tough for me to get behind this pitching staff. And like I said, the talent's there. These are all going to be drafted guys when it comes to the end of the day, just because of the stuff they have. But how's it going to all translate? It's just, there's such like big question marks. Obviously, Wes Johnson is fantastic with pitchers. That's how he got into coaching in the first place. That's how he got the Georgia job. So I should say,
this is now his 3rd year, and his fingerprints have not been on these pitching staffs at all. Like, they've been, old transfer guys. And again, this is an old transfer one. So I know that I know I'm a victim of it too, of, Wes Johnson's a pitching guy, but I feel like they're just trying to throw anything at a wall and see what sticks with the staff. Like, that's the one thing that I think is going to really is managing the egos, because a lot of these guys started a lot of games at the schools that they were at, and Scott and Volchko were late. So you don't know what they were promised. The other guys were promised in terms of starting roles and innings. I think that that's going to be the thing that really kind of comes down to it, is some of these guys that transferred in thinking they were going to get, Sunday roles that are now deep in the bullpen, how they kind of take coming out of the bullpen. I think that that's going to be the story of this Georgia team, is that bullpen. But from a hitting standpoint, I mean, it's Ryan Black, it's Trey Phelps, it's Colby Branch. It's a it's a fun Georgia lineup.
Yeah, this is the same Georgia lineup as pretty much. Now, are they going to hit 144 like they did last year? I don't quite think so. There also seems to be a little bit of change in the balls. Maybe that's just me, but from hearing from coaches and people in the fall, apparently there's something a little bit different. It's not quite carrying. We'll see if that translates, because we know the NCAA likes runs and likes the TV product, and runs help with that. But yeah, you mentioned Colby Branch, Trey Phillips, Jordan Oriak from New Mexico, who I believe led that conference in hitting last year, transfers in. Who's going to play second base? Is it going to be Ryan Black? Is it going to be Ryan Lujo from Dayton? One of those mini Dayton transfers. But yeah, this offense is going to hit, and that's what's going to keep their floor so high. Is this offense? But yeah, the pitching staff is that's where the questions are. But this offense, I really do believe in this offense.
Yeah, Bryce Callaway, another one from UNO. He was the two-way guy for them, just focusing on hitting over there. I think he's another one where he's going to slide into the DH role. Ty Peoples, the freshman, I don't know if there's a spot for him this year, but I think that he's another guy if you're looking ahead. But I have Georgia on the top half, and I think that this might be one of those ones that we disagree on. I am extremely, extremely high on Georgia.
Yeah, we are a bit different. And we can't go without mentioning Kenny Ishikawa either. I don't know how that slipped. We'll see what kind of role he has. There's been mention that he's going to be their Sunday guy, as well as their leadoff hitter and starting center fielder. I haven't seen him pitch personally, so I can't speak much to it. I've just
you got to go find his Instagram. He pitches on his Instagram a ton.
Okay, I'll have to look. So like I said, I've just seen kind of numbers, and obviously the numbers are good, and the stuff he's upper 90s. But I like him better as a leadoff center fielder personally. So we'll see what kind of role that plays. But
so I'm gonna let this spill. I have Georgia third.
Woo!
See, so that'll tell you how high I am on Georgia.
I have them eighth. So they are my very last one that is that will reach that top half. Yeah, third. So I guess the clicking is like, this is one of those teams though, because of the transfers and because of the talent. I'm not going to be surprised if they finish first, second, third, fourth. Like, the talent is there. And is the pitching staff going to translate? If Joey Bochco turns into a true ace, he's going to be tough to beat on Fridays. This is one of those teams with a talent there, for sure. But I also feel like we've expected that the last 2 years. Just hasn't quite happened. But yeah, it's very possible.
I think that this is another one too, where, we're harping on the Arkansas schedule. I think the Georgia schedule really kind of lines up for them. Like, they don't have to go play at Texas. They don't have to go play at Kentucky. A&M's one of their road games. Ball flies there. Auburn, ball flies there. Like, for a hit first, we're going to trust it. Like, they got an absolute dream schedule out of it. Maybe, you would flip Lindsey Nelson to go the other way, but I think Georgia really kind of plays into their schedule, and they built this team for the schedule. I know last year we talked about how this team was, praying and, destined to go to Omaha, and it didn't happen. I think that this feels like, a year later where, stuff kind of falls their way. Moving on into the Kentucky Wildcats, probably the most polarizing team in the SEC. 31-26, 17-13 in the SEC. They snuck into that Clemson regional, actually eliminated Clemson. They had a little bit of a slump coming off a College World Series. They challenged themselves, unlike some of these teams in the SEC, so that's why the record is what it is. But they return Luke Lawrence and Tyler Bell up the middle, and they return probably the best staff in the SEC, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, when you look at it 1 through 3, like when you talk about like the actual Friday through Sunday guys, it's very possible. Now, what are we going to get out of Jackson Jelkin? If we get the true ace version of him, where you saw it at times.
I should say, I saw him at Houston 2 years ago, which again, 2 years ago, and he's the real deal. He pounds the zone. His ERA was a little bit inflated, but you can really kind of tell when he started to have those arm issues, because his last 2 starts, he really, really wasn't that good. So he uses every bit as advertised from what I've seen.
Yeah, and it's obviously he's coming off Tommy John, so it's another one of those, what are you going to get out of him type of things. The stuff was definitely there at Houston. He took, I think he transferred to Kentucky last year and was up there rehabbing, and now
he was the first base coach.
Yeah, this year he's ready to go. So that definitely makes, and you know what you're getting out of Ben Cleaver and Nate Harris, two very, I would even say, their stuff isn't fantastic. Like, it's not like when you look at turn on an SEC game and you're watching a Friday night or Saturday night guy and you're seeing who's on the mound for the other teams. It's not somebody they're not guys who are going to blow you away, but they get the job done week in and week out. And I think that's kind of going to be the case here again. You mentioned like they return 178 innings that they threw last year. So the bullpen is also very reliable. This is probably the most talented team that Mingione has had there. I know that the 24 team who finished second or tied for first in the regular season with the Tennessee team who won it all was good. I don't think they were as talented though as possibly this Kentucky team. This is another one of those where it's like, yes, people just think Kentucky baseball. There's no way they're that talented, but yeah, they brought in a lot of pieces. You look at, I mean, Tyler Kearney's very under the radar, I think, transfer portal guy who was very, very good at shortstop last year for Indiana. He's going to be sliding over the third base. He's reliable with the bat. You mentioned Tyler Bell. Surprised that they even got him into school, considering how high of a draft guy he was in high school, and especially to get him to Kentucky. Usually you'd see that maybe at LSU or Vandy or somebody where they can get somebody to come to school, but they were able to convince them. So, yeah, I think the talent is there for Mingione, and they always play that weird small ball style. They're going to beat you in the ground, beat you to death. They want it low scoring. They're going to steal bases, and they're like, when you go up there to play, it's never fun. They always give teams trouble.
Yeah, pink hats, weird weather, lots of small ball.
Spider-Man meme home run celebration.
I don't know if this is a more talented team than 2024 just because that one went to Omaha, but this feels like a more Mingione squad. Tyler Bell, I think, is probably the most dynamic player in Kentucky baseball history. I mean, he's their highest rated person to ever make it to camp.
Yeah.
And ironically, he's going to get drafted a lot higher than he was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
What they get out of Jelkin, I think, is going to be kind of the story of this team, is if he can provide that depth in that Sunday role. Because there's not a lot of teams that have solidified Sunday guys. Ryan Schwartz is another guy that they kind of have back. Ira Austin is a guy that I got to see at UNO. It's a really exciting time to be a Kentucky baseball fan. I think that they're going to take massive, massive, massive steps forward. And this is a team that's built for a regional. I don't think there's that many teams in the SEC that can really say that they're built for a regional, where they're going to be a tough out. I mean, to beat this team twice. And they're going to get somebody in the SEC to rage bait like they do every single year. But it really wouldn't surprise me if you look up and at the end of the year, Kentucky's in that kind of 12 to 16 hosting discussion.
Yeah, and especially if they host, chances are when they host, like I know they're doing their 2 seeds. Obviously, it's going to be somebody out of the SEC, but doing the 1 through 32, I believe, will help them this year, because then they're 3 and 4 because of how they do the regional. Like when they do the regionals and they put people there, they're probably going to get like a MAC team possibly as their 4, and maybe a lower seeded 3, just because they're going to be based out of the North, just for travel restrictions and things like that. So I think, yeah, if this team ends up hosting a regional, that's somewhere that nobody wants to go.
They also eliminated a very talented Oregon State team in a super regional too. So I don't think that they really fear anybody in the postseason.
Correct. Yeah.
Again, strengths, we have them as strike throwing and fielding. Biggest concern is going to be power hitting. X factor again, Jackson Jelkin, and then Jace Tharnish in the outfield is the uncut gem. I have Kentucky at 6. So that's over 8. Is that kind of where you have them too as well?
I have them over 8 as well. I have them in that 9-10 range. This is another team, though. We talked about the parity. This is another one I'm not going to be surprised if they finish in that top 4, just because their schedule, I mean, their schedule isn't, it's kind of the middle of the pack type of schedule when I looked at it. They do get some great home series, so that's going to help out a lot. I think this is going to be somewhere where at the end of the year, we're looking around that 16 and 14, 15 and 15 type of year in SEC, which obviously is very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting Kentucky team. Moving on to the defending national champions, the LSU Tigers, 53 and 15, 19 and 13 in the SEC. Obviously, it's Jay Johnson's second national championship in 4 years. They're replacing a lot of guys, but I want to go out on a limb and say this team is more talented than last year.
It could be. It has the potential to be. But this is another one that's going to rely on, like, which version of Trent Caraway do we get? Do we get the part that was when he was the regional MVP when he hit 5 home runs last year in their regional? Or do we get the part where he struggled the back half of the season? I know he was dealing with a little bit of an injury, so it's what do we get out of him? How does Zach York? We know he can hit. Excuse me. We know he can hit. How does it translate though in the SEC? So that's kind of going to be part of it. We know what you're getting out of Derek Curiel, Jake Brown, those guys. Obviously, Stephen Milam's going to hit. So we know what the offense is going to bring from the returners. Chris Stanfield, I think, led them in SEC, when it comes to SEC hitting, led them in average. He's going to be moving over to left, obviously, this year with Curiel moving to center. But that's just another guy at the bottom of the lineup that you know what he's going to give you. So, yeah, I'm high on this lineup, but I think the talent-wise, we'll see how like I said, the Zach Yorks and the Trent Caraway, Braden Simpson's another one coming from a small school. We'll see how he kind of translates to this SEC ball.
Yeah, I should say I get to see their national championship rings in person. They are like MLB levels of big. They're absolutely insane. I'm really intrigued by the selflessness of this LSU Tigers team. You know, Chris Stanfield moving over to left with Curiel moving to center. I mean, that's a very veteran thing to do. Jake Brown, again, what he did last year with kind of that platoon with Pearson. I think that the outfield's very, very selfless. Cade Arambidi, I mean, this is a guy that I feel like we've been hearing about for years and years and years. Yeah. It's going to be his time to shine.
Their fall MVP is what Jay Johnson said, so that's a good sign for them.
I'll say this: I got to watch him take BP in Omaha, and he was putting it like into the walkway. Like he just has an unreal amount of power. Milam, I think Tanner Reeves is another guy that you could kind of see in the mix and that kind of second base role with Braden Simpson. But I'm really intrigued by the pitching staff because who's going to be the Anthony Ianson? Who's going to be the guy that kind of steps up? William Schmidt, obviously, is a guy that just 8 innings for him, but he always kind of felt like LSU shortened games, and Schmidt really didn't get the workload that I guess he deserved. Because every time he pitched, he really kind of flashed good. So now that he's kind of in that solidified Saturday role, because I think that's where LSU's at the best, is when they have that kind of 1A and 1B like they had with Ianson, like they had with Ty Floyd. Do you think William Schmidt's going to be the guy that kind of steps up there?
I do. I really do. I think a lot of people forget how highly touted he was coming out of high school. It's just one of those cases where if he wasn't at LSU, if he was at almost any other school in the country, he would have already been a weekend starter. So I think it's tough when you have Ianson come in and you're behind Cade Anderson and you're just behind those guys. It's tough to kind of find a role. And that's because of LSU's strength of their roster and their pitching staff. But yeah, I mean, you lose 52 of 68 starts on the mound. That's tough to replace. Now, Case Evans, obviously, especially towards the back end of the year, was very, very good for them. He should step into that Friday role just fine. William Schmidt, I believe in for Saturdays. Big question mark on Sundays for me. I know Cooper Moore was very reliable last year at Kansas as their Saturday guy, with Don Begley being their Friday. What do we get out of him? He's another one of those. I kind of compare him like to the Caden Aoki type that we already talked about for Georgia, where he's not going to surprise people with stuff. It's not hit and miss type of stuff. So can he keep the ball in the ballpark? Can he keep those batted balls in play? The average is down when it comes to that standpoint. So the question mark for me is on Sundays, and then you're relying on a lot of transfers in the bullpen. Like obviously you get Zach Cowan back. Jaden Newt back, and the big name some people forgetting Gavin Guidry, who missed last year with his injury, is back to be a closer again. But outside of those guys, I don't know where the innings come from. Like obviously LSU has talent. Like there's going to be guys that step up, but I think this bullpen is kind of my biggest question mark with this team if some of those starters don't have their A game.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of those ones where you really kind of have to trust the staff that they've built. They're relying on a lot of internal arms, I think, is one. But I'm really excited. Like, this is a lot of guys that I feel like I've been hearing about for 2-3 years that are going to kind of finally step up and get into that role. Maverick Rizzi, I think, was a guy that I remember in the fall I was super, super excited about. I think he's going to get a chance to get more than 20 innings. I should say this year's team, I feel like, has a little bit more of a buffer for the pitching staff. Like the hitting's going to be, I think, a little bit more. again, this feels so dirty saying about the team that won the national championship, but I feel like the hitting took big steps forward. Like it's a lineup that you truly kind of blink and you're like, man, I don't want to face the 6-7 guy in the order. They upgrade. Milam's another year older. Curiel's another year older. Brown's another year older. Aaron Beatty behind the plate's another year older. John Pearson's a guy that, again, I think Jay's been talking about for 3 years. I'm really excited to see this LSU team. I always hate putting high expectations on the defending national championship because it is so hard to repeat. But I mean, this just feels like another LSU kind of buzzsaw, if you will.
Yeah, I think this team's going to flip-flop from last year, like how pitching dependent they were. I think under the radar, last year's offense wasn't fantastic. Like they relied a ton on the long ball. Bear Jones carried them through a lot of like walk-off victories. I think that helped a lot. I think this is going to be a team that gets on base a lot more than last year. And the power is going to be there. What are we going to get power-wise from Derek Curiel? Everything in the reports from fall has been he's hit the ball a lot harder. His exit, he's setting like every week he's setting a new exit velo record for himself. So I think that's going to be another step where he needs to get into, like, what do you have, 7 or 8 home runs last year? I think he gets into double digits around that, maybe 12 to 15 range. So I think that will improve. But yeah, I think this is going to be a better LSU offense than last year. But the pitching staff obviously is a work in progress. And it's tough to expect the pitching staff to be as good as a team with the number one overall pick and Anthony Ianson, who had an ERA in the 2s.
Trackman numbers, Stephen Milam over 100. Omar Cerna over 100, John Pearson over 100, Mason Braun 107, Stanfield 106. Like this feels like a deep LSU lineup where it's going to be a fight at the bat rack. And I think for a lot of teams, it's kind of been this either or. LSU feels like the most balanced team in the SEC. Like they're the most consistent. Yeah. I don't see them kind of being below 5th in terms of like. I'm trying to think of like nightmare scenarios for LSU, and I can't put them past 5th. Like I just feel like, well, if they don't get Cooper Wall in the Sunday roll, but it's like, well, they can also hit other teams Sunday pitching really well.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's not a lot of holes in this LSU team, which I always try and do of trying to nitpick these, and I really struggled with that with LSU. It's like, maybe the team speed. Well, Curiel's and Stanfield are burners. So I have LSU 1, so that's well within our top 8.
Yeah, I have them as my number 2 overall team. So yeah, they'd put me first here. Cautiously optimistic. I mean, obviously a team that has won the national championship hasn't returned to Omaha since the Virginia team did it, and I believe 2018. So it's tough to do. Repeating's an even tougher task. So it's just getting to Omaha is something that hasn't been done in almost a decade. So. Yeah, I think obviously the talent's there to do it. And you mentioned balance. This is absolutely a team with balance.
Here's my hot take. I know that I have them number 1. I think they finally get a tough draw. They've had, I wouldn't say easy draws the past few years, but they haven't run into kind of that buzzsaw. Like West Virginia last year in the Super Regionals was kind of the last team standing in that Clemson Regional. Obviously, they had a weak, regional too as well that they hosted. I think that this is one of those ones where they run into somebody that's really hot, like Mississippi State, which is a good segue into them, how they've had some bad luck. Oklahoma State's had some bad luck. I feel like that's going to be the one thing that is LSU's draw that kind of does them in. They've had just such good draws.
Yeah, they got helped last year by who was it last year in there? Arkansas Little Rock ended up being in their championship. Obviously a good team clearly, but yeah, if you get that in your regional championship, you'd sign up for that any day.
Yeah, I think it'll be kind of similar to the 24 where they run into, North Carolina or somebody like that. Moving on into and probably the most excited fan base in the SEC, the Mississippi State Bulldogs. They have first-year head coach Brian O'Connor. They went 15-15 in the SEC, bounced in the Tallahassee Regional. It's announced that Brian O'Connor is coming to Mississippi State in the middle of that game. And with him, he brings a bevy of transfers over. Tomas Valanciunas and his brother, Aiden Teal. It feels like a marriage of a really talented Virginia team from last year and a really talented Mississippi State team. Before we jump into rosters, do you think Brian O'Connor can deliver on the hype? Because it does kind of feel like Omaha or bust for this team.
Yeah, and that's tough. If it's Omaha or bust, that's tough. I mean, we all know how hard it is to make Omaha. Like, you need to be lucky from like not every like the best teams make it every year. We've seen that. So luck also has to be on your side. But I think from a Brian O'Connor standpoint, clearly I think this is going to re-energize him. Like, he didn't need to leave Virginia. He could have been like Virginia would have kept him for life.
I think he kind of did need to leave Virginia.
I don't think. I mean, okay, they had a bad year last year. I think yes, but winning a national championship, I think he would have been fine there. I think they would have bounced back. But I think this is one of those where he seems like a guy, and I think we've both met him and talked to him. He's very kind of like outgoing and confident in himself. And this seems like such a challenge. He's like, if you're going to take a step up, let me take the biggest step up possible. So it's like he wasn't going to take any job from Virginia. It had to be somebody like a Mississippi State, like an LSU or Texas or somebody like that come calling to get him out of Virginia. So I think he's going to be reinvigorated. I think he knows what he needs to deliver. And the fan base is going to let him know week in and week out. And I think keeping Justin Parker on staff was massive. I think as an interim coach last year, what he did to kind of turn their season around in that second half, where it looked like they were falling off a cliff the first half of the season, and then the second half, how they even getting into regional when it looked like they were going to miss the postseason altogether, and then we're getting to return the pitchers that they did, just keep on staff, only because he stayed, is going to be huge. And I think that you can contribute to Brian O'Connor being able to keep him.
Yeah, I mean, he did a fantastic job because there was a lot of students and players that I talked to that were pissed when that leaked during the game, and he kind of went in and righted the ship. I saw a stat that every coach in Mississippi State history, other than Andy Cannizaro, which a little bit of an asterisk because his team did end up going to Omaha, as a head coach of Mississippi State, has gone to Omaha. And it's been 5 years since they won the national championship. And, they haven't even come close to Omaha. So I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see the fan base with him, because I think he gives you a lot of bravado. He gives you a lot of juice. But let's move into the lineup first. Let's switch it up here. Gatlin Sanders is coming back again. Ace Reese is on a lot of people's Golden Spikes list. Nolan Sullivan. Then you bring in an Aiden Teal, Valanciunas, Drew Wires. It's a good lineup again. This feels like the Mississippi State teams of 10 years ago.
Yeah, this team's going to rake. This team is going to be very fun to watch every weekend when you turn your TV on for SEC series. In that ballpark, there's going to be a lot of home runs hit. You mentioned Ace Reese. I think Noah Sullivan's one who's weirdly underlooked for how much power he has, how good of a hitter he is. Yeah, he's extremely good. Aiden Teal, we know what he is. Reed Stallman is another one. Kind of question on whether he plays the corner outfield or first base. So we'll see from there. Bryce Chance is another one who's been around. So yeah, this lineup is just loaded, and it's going to have to carry them, in my opinion, just because I don't know what to think of this pitching staff. This is a wait and see type of pitching staff for me. We know talent's there. Obviously, we've seen all these guys kind of at their top, but we've also seen them at their bottom as well. So it depends on which versions you get. But yeah, this offense will be one of the top half offenses in the SEC, and they're very able to carry them. I
know for me, is I feel like I kind of get an eye twitch when talking about this Mississippi State, because that really was what got the last guy fired, was the pitching staff. Like,
yeah,
I forget what year it was, but they were absolutely terrible at pitching. Like, they had an ERA over
23. It was 22 or 23, because I remember 22. That's when
they missed the postseason because they couldn't figure out the pitching. And
Tennessee went in there and scored 49 runs in a three game series. It was that was bad.
You get Pitzer out of South Carolina. I think he's another guy. Ben Davis. Yeah. Jack Bauer, I think, had a lot of people talking. I know he was a few of our picks for freshman of the year. But I think that this is going to be a Mississippi State team. Do we see what we saw with Virginia last year? That's the thing that I keep kind of coming back to, is kind of a helter-skelter, boohoo type thing, is, why did things go so wrong the last year at Virginia? Because Virginia's really lucky A&M missed the tournament, because Virginia was just as guilty of being disappointing.
Yeah.
And, you can't have that at Mississippi State. Like, if Mississippi State didn't hire Brian O'Connor for the stadium to sit empty the first week of June.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's part of the problem is, I think when you look at this pitching staff, especially the starters, I think it's more like you have maybe 2 Saturday guys and a Sunday guy. Like I don't see they don't have a true ace, which is going to cause when in the SEC that causes you problems if you lose every Friday, just because you're outmanned on the mound. Obviously, Ryan McPherson could step up and be that guy, but he hasn't shown it over his career like that he can handle that load yet. And then you look at obviously bringing in Valanciunas and Kirk from Virginia. I'm higher on Valanciunas than Kirk. That's just because I've seen him more. But I don't know. Maybe you can tell me different. But do you think this team has an ace that can really win games on Fridays? That's my biggest concern with this team.
Again, we haven't seen him pitch a single inning and record a single out. But I think Jack Bauer's gonna be somebody that they move into that Sunday role, where when you get the second, third week of SEC play, you're gonna be like their Friday guys going on Sunday. The fastball touches 103. He had a little bit of control issues in some of the summer stuff, but I think Bauer's like going to be the guy that they really kind of look to and lean to, and how he matures on the mound, how they manage his workload. I think he's going to tell a big, big story of this Mississippi State team. But if they had 3 Saturday guys in 24 and it went up to Virginia and gave them hell. So I think it's one of those ones where the lineup's really, really deep. Teal's going to hit leadoff. He's my pick for transfer of the year in the SEC. Ace Reese is a very, very popular pick for Golden Spikes. I think, let me see what I had them at, because I know that I kind of went back and forth where it was like, do I rate them based off of, pessimism or optimism? I have them top half of the SEC.
Yeah, same. I have them 4th. I think this is one of those.
I had them 4th too. So
okay. I think we've talked about schedules. They got no help with their schedule. They had got Vandy, Georgia, Tennessee, LSU, Auburn, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Texas, and A&M. That is one of those where it's like, hey, Brian O'Connor, welcome to the SEC. You got no favors from that standpoint. So
they get Ole Miss on the road too. That's the other one.
Correct? Yeah.
So they're going to get hell from Ole Miss.
And South Carolina is the one. I think their easiest one they have is at South Carolina.
Yeah,
so that part does help as well.
The Hog Pen's not an easy place. 203 is not an easy place. Texas is probably the hardest place to play in the SEC with how different the field plays.
Yeah.
And it's like boom, 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 boom. Like they're gonna have a ridiculous RPI because they play Southern Miss twice. They get Ole Miss in a midweek, but it really wouldn't surprise me if they're like 15-15 in the SEC.
Yeah, no, and that's where I think the Ole Miss fans need to temper expectations a little bit. Like they're Omaha and bust. Like they could go 15-15 in the SEC and make Omaha. We've seen that in past years. Like that wouldn't be a shock.
They've done it. Remember, they've done it before. I think it was 17. Yeah, they were under 500 and got hot.
That's true. And but just remember, like this is a team with 26 newcomers, and I know a lot of them are from it helps that some are from Virginia and they've played together. But this is a fan base who you could see after those first few SEC series, considering how tough they are. If they start barking and like the players, I don't think O'Connor will feel it as much as the players might start feeling that pressure to why are we 6-9 right now?
I don't know. O'Connor hasn't dealt with this. This is a different beat. This is like something only 5 this is LSU levels.
Yeah, that's true.
And this is not, we don't really care because we just won the national championship, Chris Lemonis. This is going to be a tough task. And I think it's one of those ones where if he wins early and they go in and steal a series from somebody, the fan base will get bought in and it'll turn into just a hornet's nest. But it's also one where they could really kind of check out and just grill and give barbecue to opposing fans. So I think that's going to be the interesting one, as their road slate is just so tough.
Yeah.
Moving on to probably the shortest one that we're going to talk about, but we're still going to give them their due. Missouri Tigers at 16-39, 3-27 for last in the SEC. They missed the postseason again. They've never made the postseason as a SEC team. Carrick Jackson's 3rd season, 39-71. What do you see from this Missouri team? Be honest.
They will win more than 3 games in the league this year. And I will say that. I'm higher on this pitching staff than I have been in the past. I think getting Pimentel back from injury last year, who we saw as a freshman, was pretty good. He kind of handled his own in the SEC. Getting Drew Dickinson, the pitching coach from UVA, to come in, I think will help bolster the staff. They're going to rely on obviously a few freshmen as well, which isn't great when it comes from an SEC standpoint. But I think they win more than 3. I really do think they win more than 3 games this year. That's just tough to do. It's tough to talk about this team, and I hate that. And I was recruited by Carrick Jackson back before he was a head coach, so it's one of those. So I know him personally. He's put in it's like a lose-lose situation. I don't care who the head coach is right now until the Missouri athletic department decides to put money into baseball. Like, you look at what other SEC schools are doing when it comes to a baseball standpoint between NIL and facilities and all that stuff, and you're just relying on basically a coach at Mizzou to say, well, just do what you can. And
it's not like they're in a talent-rich area and they could – it's like somebody like Houston could, in theory, not invest that much in NIL because there's so much talent. Like, it's not like St. Louis and Kansas City are producing – all these D1 guys. Like, it's already a tough job when you don't do NIL. And here's my hot take. I think they're going to be worse this year. Really? I don't know how that they could be much worse than they were last year, but they feel like they regressed with some of the guys that they brought in. Some of the guys that, we get another year of Brock Daniels, who's probably their best player. We get another year of Pierre Seals, the Memphis transfer coming over. Chris Patterson's another guy that I really, really like. But Ian Loesch is a 5th-year guy coming off of an injury with a 7 ERA, and he's going to be your Saturday guy.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of those ones where somebody's going to have to screw up. And like at A&M level last year, or Florida 2 years ago, where I don't think they shouldn't win it. I'll be shocked if they win a series in the SEC, let alone 3 games.
The series, yes, but I don't think they get swept every series last year like they did, all except for one. Obviously, A&M. I think what they're going to do, and it sounds like from what I've heard from Carrick Jackson in their fall, is like this is the most athletic team they've had. I think they're going to have to try to play it like Kentucky, where it's like, hey, we're going to move runners over. Like, we're going to have to use our speed on the bases because we can't play like those other teams in the SEC do. We can't outmatch you. We don't have starters who are going to hold teams to 2 or 3. So they're going to have to find ways to win. But I really do think they get to 4 or 5 this year, just because I think there's going to be certain weekends where they at least roll off 1.
I don't know. I mean, they lost to like HBCUs last year.
Yeah.
They got destroyed by Kansas.
I just think they're more talented this year than last year, personally.
I mean, they have a tough road slate in general, which, again, they don't get the luxury of playing themselves like some of these other SEC teams do. But, at Kentucky, at Texas, probably the 2 most difficult parks to play at OU, another one that plays really, really big.
They get South Carolina at home. Could they get 2 there? It's possible.
That's the one.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I don't think A&M takes them lightly this year. It wouldn't surprise me if A&M runs it up on them.
Oh God, yeah, that's
Tennessee. Like, I mean, it's just again, we know it's not Carrick Jackson. It's a tough job. I mean, I would go as far as to say I think it's the toughest job at any sport in the country.
Like I say, you're put in an impossible situation. Like I think it's further north than Lexington, I believe, like where they're located in Columbia. So it's the furthest north. It's not a big recruiting base out of like your Kansas, Missouri, Illinois. Those aren't exactly big hubs. Like you mentioned, teams that even don't use a transfer portal, like Houston. Oklahoma State doesn't use the transfer portal a lot, but they're located in Oklahoma, Texas. So it's a lot easier to recruit there. And if you're just not, if you're bringing
in. Again, we never want to root for coaches to get fired, but the fact that Carrick Johnson wasn't fired after turning in the worst season in 60 years in the SEC, I think really shows you the commitment that Missouri has. Because
I think, and that's what it's also who's going to take this.
100%. Like if Carrick's, I think the best coach that they're going to get. Like if they fire him, I think it'd be stupid. But
Max Scherzer, maybe he comes.
it's just, I feel bad. like for Kerrick Jackson. I don't think he deserves that.
No.
Like I think he was a great coach at Memphis. He had them kind of rolling a little bit, and then to go up to Missouri and just the dumpster fire that is that. I think it's gonna be one of those ones where you kind of see it, trickle down. You have Missouri well below the cut line, right?
Yeah, I've got them. Yeah, last.
Next up, the Ole Miss Rebels. They were 43-21, 7th in the SEC, but they did host their own regional. It's Mike Bianco's 26th year under the helm. I think that this is one of those teams where it could have been a lot worse with how many guys that they're like. Judd Udemark probably should have got drafted. Furness could have got drafted. Elliott, old man Elliott, kind of kicking it around. Where this would be a very,
Austin
very
Foley,
different, this would be a very, very different conversation if things would have gone the way that we all anticipated. And I think Ole Miss is going to kind of use this as a bridge year.
Yeah, this is one of those. It was surprising. Like I think this was another one we talked about with Auburn last year, where this team outdid their preseason expectations. I don't think anybody saw them as last year as, hey, they're going to be the 10th overall seed in the tournament. So that was pretty surprising. They, in my opinion, had the most fun regional. Like it was just a launch
awesome.
pad.
I was there.
Crazy.
It was awesome.
Yeah, you get Murray State and you get Georgia Tech was the other one, was the 2 there.
And Western Kentucky was
Western Kentucky.
3.
Yeah, it was, and yeah, that was an awesome regional. But yeah, you kind of mentioned it. Losing Hill, Sanford, Humphrey, kind of the guys that had been there for 3 or 4 years and were really the team leaders, is who takes over. Obviously, Udermark, you get back Austin Foley, Will Furness, Tristan Becerra comes in from Clemson, who was a big name out of high school and just didn't click completely at Clemson. It always felt like he was one away from being like in the lineup every day at Clemson. He was always like the one odd man out. So we'll see what he does. Obviously, getting Dom Decker from Murray State in if you can't beat him, let's invite him type of situation. That's a great pickup to get him to play second base. But yeah, it's outside of, this is another one. You know what you're getting from Hunter Elliott on Fridays. Possibly the best pitcher in the SEC. I don't think anybody would argue that he's at least in the top 5. He's another one of those where it's another one of those, you look at him pitch on Fridays, he's not like super electric, but he's going to strike out half the guys he faces, and he's going to be in the top 5 in SEC and ERA.
You want to hear the craziest thing though about him? He has another year, technically. Should he take it?
He will not,
because he had 2 medical red shirts.
Yeah,
and he pitched as I feel like he's been there forever. Like we've been talking about him forever.
It does seem like that. Well, it's because he pitched so much as a freshman too. So
yeah,
he's just been around there so long. Yeah, it's, you know what you're getting there. Cade Townsend, I don't think he's a Saturday guy in the SEC. That's where kind of it's such a big drop off from Hunter Elliott to the rest of the staff, is where I kind of see the problem here. This is another one where I think this offense is going to be better than the pitching staff, but how far can the offense kind of carry them?
It feels very hot cold for me. Like there's a lot of guys that you look up that you really do kind of trust, like Judd Udemark. But again, in that Murray State regional, he did kind of disappear when the lights kind of got a little bit bigger. Yeah. Will Furness is another guy where, he kind of comes through and gets the big hit, but the flip side of that is he always kind of seems to, when he's cold, get really cold. Hayden Federico is another one that's, does he kind of take that next step forward? And then what they do with Owen Pano and Braden Randall. These are both guys that don't really hit the ball that good, but they both play shortstop. They both kind of provide you that slapper that's going to turn the lineup over. I think what we see from them. But I really want to be high on this Ole Miss team because I don't want to doubt them 2 years in a row and they do me wrong. But this feels like an Ole Miss team that's just kind of happy to be here, where they're like, man, it could have been a lot worse. Like, we got Udemark back another year. We got Furness back another year. Like, Hayden Federico, we kind of heard murmurs of him transferring. We get Elliott back. This feels like just a going through the motions Ole Miss team. And I know that's not probably the best thing that we're going to hear from a lot of these, but, they're not investing into the NIL. So I think that's kind of how I feel with them, is just kind of like they're here. They're going to beat somebody that they shouldn't.
Yeah, and hearing from Ole Miss fans, they are upset. Like, you look at what Mississippi State's doing right down the road from them, where it's, hey, we're paying these guys to stay. We're bringing in O'Connor. We're doing all these transfer things. And Ole Miss feels like on the opposite side of that. we're just kind of sticking with the pro quo another year. And it's the offense. You mentioned those three. It's very, very top heavy. Like you could put those top three guys would play like are very good and would play like in a lot of lineups. Like, but they'd be maybe lower half of lineups in other SEC lineups. They just don't have the depth of other SEC lineups because I don't know what to think of this 5 through 9 right now, maybe 4 through 9. So we'll see what this turns into, but I think this is the year they take a step back for sure, and they're going to be somewhere. If we think 12 teams get in, are they that 12th or 13th team?
They kind of feel like they're going to be right at that cut line.
Yeah.
Where let me see what I have them. I have them 14th for reference. I mean,
yeah, that's the same. I have them 14th. No, I have them 13th. Here's
the thing about them, and I'll get to see them when they come to Houston. They can hide in the schedule at the beginning. Like we're not gonna know if they're a good team or not until they get into SEC play against Texas. Like
this is one of those. Yeah, until you get
and even then you can kind of talk yourself into going, well, Texas is a top 5 team. That's I think we'll know. Mississippi State, I think, is when we'll kind of know if they're a good team.
A team that should have what? I mean, you look at it. If they have more than 4 or 5 losses coming into SEC play, I think we'll be surprised. So it's
they've done that the last 2-3 years too, where they'll roll in at like 22-1, having not played anybody with a pulse. not doing dumb stuff. I have them missing the tournament. I think you kind of have them on the cut line.
Yeah.
We have them well below. But again, this is one of those teams where it really wouldn't shock me if they host another regional again. Moving on into the Oklahoma Sooners, another team that I think is really, really polarizing as they feel like a complete 180 off of the roster that they had last year. They lose the Twins. The rumor is Cam Johnson's going to be in that Friday night role. 14-16 in the SEC. They were in the hunt to host really, really late before dropping those 2 series. Skip Johnson's 8th year. What's the ceiling and the floor for this OU team? Because it does kind of feel like it's a really, really mixed bag.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of this team. This is another year where Skip Johnson's replacing all 3 starters. Obviously, you knew last year, you knew what you're getting, both Weatherspoons and Cade Crossland. It was every single weekend, those 3 guys, and they were going to give you a quality start. Like even
actually, Cam Johnson was the Sunday guy before Crossland stepped up. If you remember correctly.
Yeah, he started that,
which kind of stunk.
Which is what I'm going to get to. It's another one of where we've been hearing in our industry about Cam Johnson for 3 years now. How he was the number 1 pitcher coming out of high school, number 1 left-handed pitcher that made it to college, going to LSU, didn't click there, comes to Oklahoma, didn't click last year. Now there's Skip Johnson's obviously been talking highly of him. He had a good fall, so he's still dealing with some location issues, which has been kind of his like kind of calling card throughout his career so far. But the ceiling for him is extremely high. Like it's extremely, extremely high if it clicks. Now, does it click though? Because if it does, that kind of changes where this team could be. But if it doesn't, and if you're relying on other guys than him, it's kind of tough.
Yeah, that's the thing with me is like I remember when LSU won the national championship, talking to some of their coaching staff, and they said he's the best pitcher that we have on the roster. And here we are 2 years later, and you can look at the Diamond Report, but here's the stats: 21 innings pitched, 24 Ks, 25 walks. And when I saw him in Round Rock, that's kind of what he was. It's a walk guy. I think it's going to be really interesting. Drew Rarick coming over from Texas. I know that they were kind of sad to see him go. Kind of what he brings to the table, I think, is another interesting one. Jackson Cleveland coming over from Miami. But the lineup, for me, I really, really like. Like, the outfield's deep. You got Jackson Walk, Dason Harris, who are coming back. Drew Dickerson's a guy who down the stretch in that tournament was doing really good. And then you add in Nolan Stevens from Mississippi State. They have 6-7 guys that could kind of slide into these 3 outfield roles. And all of them provide depth, experience, but not a lot of power. I think that's the one thing that really kind of jumps out to me is this team doesn't really hit the ball for power that well.
Yeah, and one more name mentioned just on the pitching staff, LJ Mercurius from UNLV. We'll see how that translates. He's a Team USA guy, though, and he threw extremely well for Team USA. So I think, personally, he ends up being a Friday guy once. And like I said, unless Cam Johnson actually turns into the Cam Johnson from what we thought out of high school, I think just the reliability that Mercurius is going to give you kind of helps from that standpoint. But, yeah, you mentioned the lineup. This is going to be another one of those teams where it's they should get on base a lot, but like you said, where's this power come from?
Yeah, they kind of have that Kentucky chaos thing going. So
they need to. Now
they need it.
Yeah, the athleticism is going to come. I mean, obviously you look at Jackson Willits, Kyle Branch, Nolan Stevens. You mentioned is it Jackson Walk or Jason Walk who should play center field for him?
Jackson Willits and Jason Walk.
I always get those two mixed up. Okay. So so kind of up the middle where their strength is, in my opinion. Like when it comes to catcher, obviously with getting Deaton LeChanson for JUCO guy. So I think this lineup is going to be. It's another one it could be hot cold, like you mentioned, for one of the kind of an Ole Miss type team, where it's some weekends they're going to take they could take a couple of series from teams where they just sneak up on them. But it's also one of those ballparks where for a team that already just looking at the lineup doesn't have a ton of power, that ballpark's not going to help you when it comes to just getting balls out of the ballpark either. So it's when you rely.
But they can play in the gaps a little bit more, which I think that this is a gap to gap team.
They're gonna try to, but that also means they need to keep. Last year they were so successful because the starting pitchers were able to keep the scores low, and they relied on a lot of doubles, triples, and kind of that timely hitting that they were able to get. Now, obviously, timely hitting that changes from team to team, year to year. You never know who's kind of those teams are going to be just from looking at a lineup. So it's one of those. If this offense is forced to put up 7, 8, 9 a game SEC play, I don't know if they can do that.
No, but here's something that I think that Kyle Branch and Jackson Willits, I think, kind of exemplify what this OU team is. I mean, really think about it. Those are two brothers that even in their own house are probably not the most talked about brothers. We talked about Colby Branch
Jackson's
from Georgia, and then Jackson's little brother just went in the top 5. And that's kind of what we are with OU. But at the same time, it's Jackson Willits is a guy who back-to-back years over 300 in Big 12 and SEC. Kyle Branch was, in my opinion, in the discussion for SEC Freshman of the Year at some times last year. They get Dayton Taki, who's more healthy again. Dason Harris is probably the most athletic player in the SEC. I know he's going to have him as the table setter. So it's weird because every part of me is this isn't an SEC ball club. This isn't how SEC teams are built to win. It's but I do like Kyle Branch. I do like Jackson Willits. I do like Dason Harris. That's what I keep coming back to with them. Is it's just there's so many pieces that I like on this team, but what are we gonna get? And it's Skip Johnson. He's another one where like Wes Johnson, where his calling card is pitching. You really do kind of have to trust the pitching staff because on paper you're ooh, I don't know if I trust him.
Yeah, and can they get to the back end? Reed Hensley, very very good closer. But can they get the ball to him at the end of games? Where are they at in that position? So you mentioned it. It's tough. I trust Skip Johnson, awesome coach. Trust him. It's just, for me is where does the depth come from on this pitching staff, and what does the lineup truly give you from a run producing standpoint?
I always feel like Gym Class Jerry, talking about what's Skip Johnson thinking about with his pitching staff? But I think we really do kind of have to trust him. Trust Skip. Kind of trust Jay, trust Skip.
Yeah.
I have them bottom half of the SEC.
Yeah, I have them. You had Ole Miss 14. I've got them 14. So I think this is another team, though, where they're going to be on that borderline type of tournament team, whether it's like that.
I have them as the last SEC team in
12, 13, 14 range. Yeah.
Moving on to college baseball circus, the South Carolina Gamecocks at 28-29, 15th in the SEC. They missed the postseason under Paul Mainieri. You look at how much yellow is on this roster. They have already lost Jake McCoy for the year. They had another injury on the pitching staff with Philippit, where we don't know kind of what it is. Yeah. Paul Mainieri had no issue calling out what he felt about his team in 2025, and a lot of those guys left. How hot do you think the Paul Mainieri seat is right now?
Dabo Sweeney hot. To keep it in the state. I think it's one of those, because I initially, I think a lot of people in the industry were very surprised by the hire in the first place. And it seemed like what it was supposed to be was somebody who was going to come in, who was experienced and was kind of going to at least settle things down and get it to a transitional period for kind of the next big name coach to step in, hopefully 3, 4, 5 years down the road. That obviously is not looking like that's how things are working out currently. This year's team, you mentioned all those yellows. I think I actually do love, and just to kind of be high on something, I love what they brought in offensively from the transfer portal.
Which is funny because I love what they brought in from a staff standpoint.
Okay, then we're opposite. I love 3 names that they brought in from a staff standpoint, but I don't see the depth on the pitching staff wise. But yeah, I mean, you look at guys like underappreciated, like Reese Moore from Iowa, Logan Suter from second base at Purdue, very undervalued name out of the portal, but a lot of teams are wanting to get him. He'll play playing second base. Tyler Bach will be hitting leadoff and playing center field for him from Wofford. So I actually do like what they got. I think this is going to be another team where there's going to be certain games where they just explode offensively, but it's going to be very hit or miss with them, because I also see this lineup is going to strike out a lot, and that's where it's kind of concerning.
This feels like a travel ball team,
where it's like let's find all the best players in the state and just put them together.
And if they click and you get one of those, well, this is the best summer I ever had levels, it's going to be great. But it's also going to be one of those ones where it's like at A&M when they hit a walk-off and nobody moves. So
yeah, it feels like, like you mentioned, like where they got a bunch of the best players they could out of the portal and without kind of positions in mind. And it's like, well, we're just going to get guys that can hit, and then we're going to find kind of places where they can play defensively. And that's kind of, I don't know I think that always ends up coming to bite people.
They do get KJ Scobie, Bo Hollins, and Talamash LaCroix. LaCroix is going to be healthy. I know he missed a ton of time behind the plate. I don't know with the South. That's why I keep coming back to the South Carolina teams. I don't know. It's like every other team I can sit here and talk about them for 15 minutes, where it's like, I have them 15th, but I could also kind of see them being better than last year because they should have more talent. But, are these guys really Mainieri guys? That's the one thing that I kept coming back to last year is last year's team really wasn't Mainieri guys. Is this a team where he can find that edge of guys out of the portal? Because this feels like when Dabo went 180, where he went straight from here to using, like, that's what this feels like. Because everybody was giving Mainieri so much crap about being old and the game's passing him by. So he goes and recruits so many guys out of the portal. Nothing would shock me with the South Carolina team other than if they finished over 500, I think that would shock me.
Yeah, that would shock me. And it's another thing it can't be put on paper is, what is the mentality of this team like? Like you mentioned, just bringing all these guys in that aren't actual South Carolina guys. It seems like a lot of them are going to be there for 1 year and hopefully just to get drafted, play in the SEC, get eyes on me, and get drafted. And then, like, knowing how steep of a hill you have to climb in the first place in this conference, coming from winning, they win 5 games last year. Then think if Mizzou didn't do what they did last year, this would be a team where it's like, this is one of the worst SEC teams.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. This is one of the ones where they're really lucky Missouri exists.
Yeah, and now mentally, Jake McCoy, he was supposed to be your kind of saving grace and give you a chance to win every Friday, being the number one. He's supposed to be first left-handed pitcher taken like in the draft, non-high school guy. So it's one of those where it's like, now you lose him for the year, and that's a blow. Just in that locker room and everything, where now it's like, okay, we get Riley Goodman coming back off the Tommy John. Obviously you bring in Ant Phillips, but question marks about him. So it's one of those where it's like, okay, now it's going to be piecing stuff together on the weekend rotation, which in the SEC that's never a good sign.
I should say something. This is not an Island of Misfit Toys team. Like, this is an expensive NIL
that's
roster.
what I'm saying. Talent-wise, that's what I'm saying. They're very good.
And they got a lot of their number one targets, too. Like, I think that's the other thing is it's not like they missed on guys then overpaid late. Like, this really the thing for me with South Carolina is are they going to act like a blue blood at the end of the year? I think that's what kind of the big tell for me is are you fine with making the postseason as a 3 and seeing that as a success, or do you act like the team that won back-to-back national championships and was a mainstay in Omaha? Like South Carolina is such an afterthought to me when it comes to talking about baseball programs. And I think a big reason for that is just they've been mediocre for so long.
Which is odd. And you mentioned getting the portal guys they want. Like when you walk into that ballpark and those facilities and like it's top of the line SEC stuff. Like I know it weirdly Founders Park never gets mentioned when it comes to everybody's always, Mississippi State, LSU. They're always talking about like all these teams, A&M, Texas and stuff like that. South Carolina Founders Park it's not as rowdy, but it's as nice. Like it's more.
I would say it's the nicest park.
Because it's like, but it has like that AAA baseball type of feel. As opposed to like, hey, this is on a college campus type of thing. Like it doesn't have that same like rowdiness. So it's a little bit different. But yeah, the facilities will attract anyone. And I still think they will to that day. You see those trophies when you walk in. But yeah, this is I think it's going to be another tough year for them.
I was going to say, I feel like they're going to be better on paper.
Yes.
But it's not going to be reflected in the wins and losses. Like they're going to get a lot of moral victories this year.
Correct. And I think there's going to be a couple weekends where they're going to win a couple weekends where they shouldn't, or they're going to win a couple or at least be close to winning a couple of weekends where they shouldn't. And I think we'll sneak up on teams. So it's just because the talent's there. And like you'll see this, I think you'll see an offense explode on a Sunday and put up like 14 and maybe when they win a game 14-12. And there's going to be certain times like that, but it's just going to be, if they piece it together, it's going to be, I think it'd be surprising if they do, but it's possible that this team but they can jump into that conversation just because of the talent wise alone.
They feel like a team that could get hot in May
or
like in that late April, early May, they'll like roll off they'll win 3 weekends in a row. I could totally see something like that. Moving on to this is probably where we're going to have the biggest gap, I would say. Tennessee Volunteers at 46-19. That was good for 8th in the SEC. They went to the Fayetteville Super Regional. Tony Vitello obviously left for the San Francisco Giants. Took the pitching coach with him, leaving Josh Elander as the man. They stole Florida's pitching coach. They returned a ton of talent on the lineup. It's a deep, deep rotation that they built through the portal. What do you think about this Tennessee team?
I think so. Talent-wise, this is still, when you just look at it, this is a top 5 team in the SEC if you look at talent alone. And I don't think that's really a question that a lot of people have. A lot of people have the question mark of, and it's hard to dispute. You lose Vitello. I think an undisputed one, losing Frank Anderson is absolutely massive. And then another name that never gets talked about, losing Quentin Everhart, who is kind of their strength coach, and he was baseball only. He got hired in 2020 or 2021. Look at that team. Like you talk about the hitters they've developed, the pitchers they've developed ever since kind of that standpoint. It's not all on Tony V and Frank Anderson. So I think those are big losses. Now, when it comes to a coaching standpoint, I know a lot of people are worried kind of I would say like the Michael Early effect from last year where it's like, oh my gosh, first time coaching the SEC. I think these are two different. I talked about this on my show last week where it's Elander is more prepared for this role than I think Early was. Early was kind of forced into it and not say, I think Early's going to be a great coach this year. I think the pressure's off. We'll talk about him in a second. I think he's due for a great year. I think just the situation he got put in last year was not ideal. But I think with what Tony V left Elander, and Elander he's already interviewed for 4 different SEC head coaching jobs. So it's like other teams saw him as like, okay, this is a guy who's going to coach in the SEC one day, and now he gets to stay in Tennessee. So it just kind of worked out that way. So we'll see from that standpoint. But the talent is absolutely there.
So I'm going to say
tell me
this.
Why you're down. I was going to say.
I'm going to say this. I have them 12th in the
Oh
SEC.
my God. Okay, we're going to fight.
I don't see it.
I have them 6th.
I feel like this is a fall of Rome. The walls are closing in. This is the carcass of a great, great team. But this team last year got really, really aided by the starting pitching that's now not there. I think that's the thing for me is it's like, okay, Manny Morin is a guy that we've been talking about now. He was the guy last year. Ariel Antigua at short. What are you going to get from him? I think that a lot of people are going to appreciate the job that Tony Vitello did this time next year. I think Elander is not Tony Vitello. I don't think anybody is. I think it's an impossible task to try and, shore it up the way that, following it up. And I think that they're going to have a lot of growing pains with Elander this year. I mean, it's not easy to make calls in the SEC, and especially with some of the things, and especially with how talented the staff is, having a new pitching coach that wasn't with the team last year, managing a lot of the.
Yeah, he was with the team. He was with the team last year.
I thought he was with Florida.
No, that was the hitting coach.
Oh, sorry.
But pitching coach was with him. Yeah.
I don't see it with this team. This feels like if you're going to talk about these teams that everybody has consensus top 25 that's going to fall out, I feel like that's the Tennessee Volunteers. Like, I know that they just don't have that Tony V kind of X factor to them. And
I think you'll be surprised. In this lineup,
I'll be very. It's one of those things where I'll probably end up eating these words when this gets clipped, but I just don't see kind of the edge that these Tennessee teams have had in the past.
Yeah, I think so.
Up and down this team,
the two guys you mentioned, Manny Morin and Ariel Antigua, like those are you're talking about the 8th and 9th guys in the order. Like those guys will be hitting 8th and 9th.
Yeah.
Jay Abernathy leading off is very undervalued. If he wasn't stuck last year with nowhere to play, he'd have been starting every game as a freshman last year. He was number 1 player in the state of Georgia, but his shortstop, obviously going to be playing center field. Can't not mention Henry Ford. Who I think number 1 hitter.
Assembly line.
Number 1 hitter in the transfer portal, in my opinion. And then Levi Clark, obviously, I think he's due. He could hit 20 this year. Newstrom, Chapman. And we'll see what Blaine Brown is another one that every team wanted out of the portal. And it's what do you get out of him? He's going to DH at least.
I got to see Blaine Brown every weekend. I was not very impressed with Blaine Brown.
Well, I've seen him in the fall, and his exit via, like you're talking, he hit a ball 113, 457 off of Tegan Coons this fall. It's been kind of crazy. So the lineup is there. They're going to score. The ballpark's going to help, obviously, too.
Yeah, the ballpark's going to aid up. But the thing is the other team gets 27 outs there, too. I think that's the other thing.
But also this team has given up less home runs than either team in the SEC from a pitching standpoint. And it's like, oh my gosh, and that's even in this ballpark. So
I'm very low on Tennessee. It wouldn't surprise me if they have kind of a 2024 LSU arc where they get hot at the end, but I think they're going to really kind of struggle as a team and as a unit early. I have them lower than the cut. You have them above.
Yeah.
Another one that probably is going to ruffle a lot of feathers. The Texas Longhorns come in. They won the SEC last year before getting bounced in their own regional. They return virtually the entire staff. They're going to play a little bit of a musical chairs with some of the stuff. Right now, all we know is that Luke Harrison is solidified as the starter. We don't know what they're going to do with Lantis. We don't know what they're going to do with Flores, Crossland, Ruger Riojas, Thomas Burns. It's probably the best pitching staff in the SEC. Wouldn't you agree?
When you add in the bullpen, yes. Like if you talk about complete
full arsenal.
Yes, it's the most. Yeah, it's most like almost MLB-ish type.
Yeah,
like
it feels very MLB-ish.
You know what role, and even every player kind of knows what role they're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, every single freshman that because I got to watch them in the alumni game, every single freshman that rolled through. And again, I'm sure every single article that you're going to read is how great the pitching staff is. So I want to provide a counterpoint. I don't think they're going to be able to hit enough this year for it to be a true Omaha lock like everybody's kind of solidifying them as. I see this team as 2024 Arkansas. That's really the comparison is, Mendoza's not going to hit double-digit home runs. Becerra's not going to hit double-digit home runs. Robbins isn't going to hit double-digit home runs. Like Williams, Larson. So you're really counting on Livingston, Borba, and Tenney. It's kind of going to be your 3 guys that can get you double-digit home runs. it's a big ballpark.
Yeah.
And the good news is I don't think they're going to have to be as perfect as they are with the staff, but I really worry where this team's going to find runs. Like, I don't see how they get 5 runs in most games against a good Friday night guy.
Yeah, I'm not as down totally, but I do get where you're coming from a power standpoint. That was one of the things I had written down as one of my biggest concerns with them is, where's it come from? Like Carson Tenney, obviously he's going to get his, but what does the strikeout rate do in the SEC? Like that has to improve. I know he still put up those numbers while striking out. I think it was like 32% of the time in the ACC last year.
I want to add something on Tenney. I saw him in the fall at the Lamar game, and I saw him at the alumni game. I have not seen him hit a ball out of the infield, which I don't know. I keep telling myself to provide more, that all these draft guys can't be wrong, but I don't, maybe I'm just his bad luck charm, so I should stop going to games, but I haven't seen him have like competitive at bats really either. That's been the other thing.
He's the big name out, but I think the bigger, to me, the better player is Robbins that they got out of the portal. I think that's actually going to translate from what he did at Seton Hall. I know it's a small school, but I think that's going to translate.
He hits. He had 2 hits in the 2 times I've seen him.
Yeah, I can't remember where I saw it, but it was like his contact rate on fastballs is 95%, which is absolutely unheard of. And he can absolutely fly. So I think that does translate. You're going to see him hit a lot of doubles, a lot of triples, kind of in this ballpark. And yeah, it's one of those. Jonah Williams now focusing on baseball helps. So it's like, what do you get out of him now? Ashton Larson has been around the block. Another one of those guys that feels like he just never found a spot at LSU, but you always knew he was on the rock because pinch hit all the time and kind of
he platoon.
Yeah.
Anthony Pack's another guy in the outfield that I think they're going to really try and ramp up. But again, he's not a double-digit home run guy.
Yeah.
So in Josh Livingston, I don't know what they're going to do with him and Timo, because he was playing third in the alumni game. I think that's going to be the interesting thing is what they do with Timo, Livingston, Pack, and Larson for third base and DH, because I think Borba's pretty much locked into first. No one else was really even taking reps at first, but this feels weird because they're a consensus top 5 team, and even I have them a top 5 team, and that 2024 Arkansas won the SEC. But that's really what I keep coming back to is I feel like if stuff goes wrong for them in a weekend, they're not going to hit their way to 8 runs.
Yeah, no, this pitching staff though is going to be dominant pitching staff.
Yeah, let's get back on the pitching staff. Flores has had a really, really fantastic fall.
Yeah.
Crossland, every single alumni that I talked to, Brett Crossland was like the first one out of their mouth. Volantis, what they do with him. Burns and kind of that setup man closer role if they speed Volantis up. I think that
him and Max Grubbs will probably split that time of just matchup wise, who's the better late.
The only thing that worries me about the pitching staff is they have so many guys that can really dominate games that it could be the 3rd or 4th week in SEC play and Rigor Haas or Max Grubbs has thrown 9 innings or something stupidly low like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have so many guys that can shorten these games that I'm really curious to see kind of how they mix all of the arms, because DVH did it where he would only send guys 5 innings. But, I mean, Harrison can go 7. Flores can go 7. We've seen Ruger go 7. So I think that's kind of the good problem to have for Texas is that they're going to struggle for innings in a good way, which is kind of what we saw with Tennessee last year.
Yeah, where does Hayden LeFew's innings come in? Where does Cal Higgins' innings come in? Yeah, it's just one of those – this is one of those pitching staffs that's – I don't know if it's too deep for their own good, but, if you're relying on more than – like we saw it with LSU where it's – it'll get trimmed down in the postseason where it's like you need your 7-8 guys and that's it.
Yeah, you wonder if they go with a quick hook when they get into SEC play and postseason play. I have them at 5 in the SEC.
I've got them
transparently is probably 8th in the country.
Yeah, that's true.
Moving on to probably the complete inverse, the Texas A&M Aggies, 30-26, 11-19. They missed the postseason with Michael Early. They have an absolutely loaded lineup. They're the only SEC team with 3 projected top 40 picks in Gavin Grahovic, transfer Chris Hakopian, and Caden Sorrell. For everything that I was saying about Texas, I feel like A&M is the inverse. I really don't know where they're going to get outs from. They get, Weston Moss, who was kind of their flex guy when a starter would go down.
Mhm.
Shane Zadeo's coming off Tommy John. Ethan Darden's kind of a Clemson guy where he's really good, he's good, and when he's not, he's not. Clayton Freshcorn's on a lot of these preseason lists. MJ Bulger for FAU was another guy, but man, it's going to be one of those ones where, we talked about, Texas can't win if they score over 5. A&M can't win if they score under 4. Like, this feels like it's going to be a wing and a prayer on Sunday, especially.
Yeah, this feels like one of those where it's just like they have a Saturday starter and 2 Sunday guy type of guys, where it's like Weston Moss, he's reliable, like you kind of know what you're going to get from him. He's not, I don't think he's dominant by any means, but he's solid. Which Shane Shadeo coming off the injury, like you mentioned, he was kind of carrying them through the postseason in 24 before he got
I was going to say he was kind of the stalwart when they
Yeah.
had a lot of those issues where it kind of slid in. But again, he had Tommy John, and
Yeah.
it's not a guarantee that he gets back to that level.
It's not. Yeah, Josh Stewart, obviously big bullpen name. He's
another guy that had a major injury last year.
And is he going to be the closer, or is he going to be the kind of the flex guy that is he going to have to step up into that Weston Moss role where he's throwing 3 or 4 innings? So we'll kind of see about that. Ethan Darden sounds like he's going to be out of the bullpen at least to start the year, unless this pitching staff just doesn't work out from the starting standpoint.
I think he's going to be kind of that flex role like Moss was last year. Here's your weird stat, by the way. Moss and Sadeo were high school teammates.
Oh, definitely.
And they did not win district, so they couldn't even win high school games.
That's kind of shocking. Yeah.
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah. What is Nico Partita to give you as a freshman? Like this, and especially being a 2A guy, that'll be interesting to see like how he's used as well.
I think he's going to be the shorts. He played third with Kellner playing short and Hakopian at second, but I think Hakopian's going to play short.
Yeah.
They've moved Grahovic over to first just because I know our Diamond Report's a little bit dated, but Grahovic's probably going to shore up first, which in my opinion, I think is a great, great thing because that was kind of their Achilles heel it was kind of like, okay, do you move Grahovic to the outfield? But if you move Grahovic to the outfield, what do you do with Wesley Jordan and Jake Durr? And Binder up, like I said, I mean, he's going to be a redshirt. He's going to be in the program 4 years at this point. I think you kind of know what you're going to get. Second base is probably going to be either Boston Kellner, who, again, is really, really impressed in the fall, or Nico Partita. I think that they want to probably pitch Nico Partita a little bit because he throws 100.
Yeah.
But, it's a really, really fantastic lineup. I mean, it might be the best lineup in the SEC.
Yeah, they're definitely choosing offense over defense.
Yeah,
from that. Yeah,
they maxed out all the stats and offense first,
and that's kind of scary considering they were the worst fielding team in the SEC last year. And now this year they're transferring to hey, we are going to try to outscore teams, and it's one that I don't hate it because they are going to be able to a lot of times with this lineup, so that's going to absolutely help, but. You can't have like they had last year. Some of those errors just came in awful times. And
I should say it's a more athletic team than last year. Like Terrence Keel is a really good athlete. Kellner and Partita are really, really athletic guys. I think Grahovic at third was, an Achilles heel. But you move him over to first, he's kind of one of the more athletic first basemen.
Yeah. And then what do you get out of Chris Hakopian's? Correct, but he's offense. He's one of the rare offense first shortstops.
Yeah, he's got weird footwork, by the way. I don't know if you've seen
he's not. You can tell he's not a natural shortstop. It's kind of a place to play. He's not very rangy. Obviously, he has the arm strength, and that's why they're going to move.
He's got a really good arm, though. I should say that.
That's why they're going to move him there. It just fits. If the ball's hit at him, he's fine. But he's not very rangy. So this is one of those where I'm concerned about the defense, but the offense is definitely there.
He's also one of those ones where you move him into kind of more of a smaller ballpark flies. So while he's making the jump from Big Ten to SEC, you actually probably think his home run numbers shoot up a little bit. Like the weather's going to be better. The stadium's going to be a little bit smaller than it plays at Maryland. So I think that, if Texas and A&M were to combine the pitching of Texas with the hitting of A&M, I think it'd be the best college team in history. But the flip side of that is if you combine Texas's lineup with A&M's pitching staff, it'd probably be Missouri. So it's a really kind of a mixed bag. I know I'm really high on Texas A&M. I have them in the top. I have them at 8. I have them right at the cut line.
Let me see where I have them now. 5, 6. I have them at 11.
I should say they made a very good TCU team look very overmatched in the fall, which again, it was the fall and stuff was weird, but those two teams didn't look like they belonged on the same field, which is kind of weird to say that TCU, like you would almost think that A&M was the top 5 team and TCU was the one off the disappointing season.
Yeah, I heard that as well. And that's why you got to take fall ball with kind of a grain of salt because it's.
Yeah, TCU wasn't at full strength.
If you let Tommy Laporte didn't pitch, if he faces any of these guys, like the starting, he's obviously a better pitcher and he's going 6 or 7 probably. That kind of changes things. So it's just one of those, it's tough to take. And especially fall ball is so offensive where it's just like.
Oh, yeah. But TCU really didn't hit that good. That was kind of the weird part about it. Is for as bad as we talked about how A&M's staff is, TCU really didn't hit them that good. Like, Fresh Corn looked really, really good against TCU. So I think it's going to be how A&M manages the 5 through 9 innings. I think that's really going to tell the tale of this one. And I'll say this. They're another one where it wouldn't shock me if they missed the tournament, but it also wouldn't shock me if they get hot at the right time and go to Omaha. Like, I think it's just a variance with them.
Yeah, agreed.
Our last team, as we try and keep it under the 2-hour mark, the Vanderbilt Commodores. They come in at 43-18, 19-11 in conference. As you may recall, they were the number 1 overall seed, but they were bounced in their own regional. Returned a lot of that team last year and then added a few guys around it. Returned basically the entire staff. What do you think Vandy does this year? Just very bluntly.
I think they struggle, personally.
I was going to say, I'm very low on Vandy too.
I've got them 12th, which obviously makes you a tournament team. I don't see this. I think last year was such – it did not feel so fluky. Like, it was just very – it was very strange how they happened to –
It felt like that Clemson regional where it wasn't necessarily that Vandy was the number 1 overall team, that they were just kind of the last ones standing at the end.
They clicked at the right time and during the SEC.
Yeah, because it was like, well, Texas really shouldn't be 1 because they've lost, 2-3 weeks in a row. It kind of just felt like, remember, in true Winter Olympics, remember when that one guy was in dead last and then everybody fell in front of him and he got the gold? That's what kind of happened with this Vandy team, I feel like, is they were good, but I remember being shocked when they beat Tennessee. And that really is kind of crazy in hindsight that one of them was the number 1 and one of them ended up traveling in a super regional, because that really shocked me when they went in. And that's kind of how I feel about this Vandy team, is everything that they do will just be kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, it's one of those, and the pitching staff carried him last year. 8th best pitching staff in the country. I think it's going to have to do it again. I know Austin Nye is getting the nod on Fridays this year. Connor Fiddle is going to go Saturday again. I guess that's just kind of where they like him fitting in. I think the book is out on Connor Fiddle, where it's like he throws this invisible last year and it kind of caught everybody off guard. I think as good as all the scouting reports and all the technology everybody has in SEC, he's not going to sneak up on teams again where it's just mid to low 80s is going to work quite as well. Now, I don't think he's going to fall off a cliff per se, but that ERA being in the 3s, I don't think that happens again.
I think if it goes to 350 from 250, it'll be a successful year.
It would be.
They moved the fences in.
Oh God, yeah. How can we be more Tennessee Vols-ish? I know people are going to love Vandy fans are going to love hearing that, but it's like we can't recruit good hitters, so let's move the fence in and create our own. It feels very odd. Like,
feels very Vandy.
Yeah, it feels very Vandy, and it's obviously what you're getting out of some of the guys. So
what do you think about Brody Johnson moving over to short? That's kind of my big. Because I didn't think he was that defensive of a third baseman.
No, it's the same issues with Chris Akopian type of thing to me, where it's like if the ball said him okay, he's a big guy too. So it's going to be one of those where it feels like, hey, we realize we need more offense this year, and this is how we do it. Just because I think Brady Holcomb's.
I thought it was
Like-
going to be Riker Waite.
Do you think
That's
so?
who I thought they were going to move over.
Or
I mean, Rustin Rigdon had been there forever.
because Carter Johnstone also could play third. They've had him there in the fall too. So it's almost like we've got guys that can play third, but nobody can play short. It kind of just feels like that to me. So it's one of those where it's like we need to find a way to get the best bats possible in this lineup because we can't have a year like last year where they were 199th in OPS, 114th in home runs, and this you can't be able to recruit like Vandy, but not get offensive guys.
No, and Aria Gerson's talked about it a ton. I'm sure Tim Corbin's probably tired of hearing it, but I think it's a very real thing is that they don't have, the power numbers. Like Brady Johnston was their number one, far and away their number one.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be another one of those seasons where they're going to get the win totals, but this is not that Vandy team that you really fear.
Mm-hmm. And it was like last year, like nobody feared, and you could tell the teams that went into that regional. And I know it kind of sucked for them. Like they should get Wright State, who's in a regional every year, and they were in Knoxville regionals. So they've been in like all these regionals where it's tough to play. And then you kind of go into Vandy and it's like, okay, this is a different atmosphere. So like none of those teams were scared to go into Vandy. Like Louisville could care less to go into Vandy. They play them during the midweek every year, and they play in all the ACC ones. It's not like traveling to some of these other ballparks. So it's just one of those things where I know they have the number one recruiting class coming in this year.
They have to, though. They're not getting transfers.
Correct, which means but that's not going to translate to this year. Like I don't know how much they're going to really rely on a lot of those arms to begin with. And then what do you get out of Nate Taylor from Georgia, he was at Georgia, and he's supposed to be one of those guys we mentioned earlier who was supposed to be one of the turnarounds for Wes Johnson. It just didn't happen. And if he's forced to be the Sunday, if he ends up starting being a Sunday guy, that's not fantastic. This is a team I'm low on them, but it's going to be, I don't know. It feels weird being low on Vanderbilt when it's sort of like what Corbin's going to give you every year. But it's just like at least talent-wise, as we've gone through 15 teams now, and it's like you look at the talent those teams have. It just for some reason on paper, and this is kind of like Vandy every year, where it's just like on paper they don't line up, but they'll somehow figure their way into the top half of the standings.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Is I go back to that Tennessee series, and even to some extent that A&M series in that second week of the year is, that wasn't like a feared Vandy team, and this one's kind of more of the same. But there probably are going to be right in the mix, and they're going to beat somebody that they shouldn't. This feels like, for me, I know we talked about a ton of those teams in that 8 to 12 range. They feel like they're firmly in the bottom of that kind of tier.
Yeah, I have them 12th. I have them literally right behind A&M. Yeah.
Well, I think that's all we have time for here as we keep it under the 2-hour mark as our producer has been buzzing us behind the scenes. Moving forward, this is going to be an hour twice a week. We're moving to Monday. We're doing recaps on Monday, breakdowns on Thursday. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Follow us on YouTube, Twitter at College Baseball Central, as well as College Baseball Insiders. See everybody Monday to talk about the games.